I believed in it. So it makes all the difference when you really believe in it. And I would not have presented it to them if I didn't believe in it. And I would not have presented it to them if I didn't feel like it made sense and the numbers made sense. Um, I am risk adverse as well, but uh, I'm also a risk taker. So
Mhm.
you can be both. You can be adverse to risk, but you can also be a risk taker at the same time.
Greetings. I'm Michael Murr, the Executive Director with CSED, the Center for Social Enterprise Development. We're a connector and capacity builder that champions social enterprise as a way to create stronger, more caring, and more sustainable communities. Social enterprises, in case you've not come across that term, are businesses and business activities that are being done for a community and social purpose. The goal of the podcast series is to explore how organizations are developing, launching, and growing successful social enterprises. And it's our hope that through these conversations, aspiring social entrepreneurs and existing social enterprise leaders will be able to gain advice, inspiration, and knowledge that they can then take back into their own operation. I'd like to thank the City of Ottawa for its financial support of our podcast series. Greetings, everyone. I'm Michael Murr with the Center for Social Enterprise Development. Welcome. Today's podcast is looking at Big Brothers Big Sisters Ottawa. Big Brothers Big Sisters of Ottawa provides critical mentoring support to youth who are facing adversity. An interesting fact is that Big Brothers Big Sisters of Ottawa is the oldest children's charity in the city, and it was established in 1970. So that's amazing. And speaking about amazing, we're delighted to have Susan Ingram, the executive director of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Ottawa, with us today. Susan, welcome.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me on.
Delighted to have you here. By way of introduction, could you just tell us about how did you come to be the executive director of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Ottawa?
Well, I've been with the agency 13 years. It'll be 14 years in January, next January. Um, well, you know what? I did not start my career in the charitable sector. I started my career in the manufacturing sector, and I'm originally from Montreal. And I moved to Ottawa for a position here. I don't know if you recall KAO Info Systems, where they used to make floppy disks, but I worked there as a project manager and then as a director of operations. And you know what? After a number of right sizing initiatives through sales to different private equity organizations, I thought, you know what? I really want to do something different. I want to do something that helps people and gives back. And it took me about 5 years to get to a place in my personal budget to be able to move into the charitable sector. But it was something that I knew I wanted to do. And the opportunity with Big Brothers Big Sisters came up, and there was a lot of transferable skills, a lot of learnings from the private sector that I knew I could take with me into working with a charity. And that took me, that took about 4 or 5 years to get there. And one of the things that I had to really think about when I was moving from the private sector to the charitable sector was what was it that I really believed in? What were the things that were important to me? What values were important to me? And I talked to a few people that I knew that worked in the charitable sector, and they said, there's lots of things you could choose from, like, would you work for Amnesty International, for example? And although I believe in human rights, and yes, I believe in that, is that where my passion lie? No. And it was around youth. I knew that it was around youth. It was around women,
Mhm.
and potentially health. So, and then then the opportunity presented itself for Big Brothers Big Sisters. And sometimes when you just know it's the right place for you. And that was in January of 2012. And I've loved working in the charitable sector ever since. And I don't think I would ever be able to go back to the private sector. I think it's something that is being able to do what you love every day, be able to help people every day. Yeah, it's been very rewarding.
That is so interesting. I think really two things. One is that you having this sense of your own personal values
Yeah.
and really trying to reflect and understand what truly is important to you. So I think that's really interesting. Um, I'm also interested. I didn't know this about you that you have that business background
Yeah.
and was was that one of the reasons why, I guess to what extent did that factor into Big Brothers Big Sisters of Ottawa looking at social enterprise as a potential vehicle for itself?
Yeah, I think, yeah, I definitely think because if I wearing that hat and having that experience, that did help with me thinking, oh, this is something this makes sense. I wasn't fearful of it. I had worked with many large clients in my previous role. And, even in my 20s, I worked in the service industry and I helped open multiple restaurants when I was, from 19 to 25. And so something like that really it just lends itself to, okay, could we open a store? Could we run a separate business? What would that look like? How could we bring in additional revenue? Like I could really see how it would benefit the organization, and it didn't make me afraid, or of how could we do it. Or I have many of my colleagues who are leaders of different organizations, and for them, it's like, why would you even think of that? But if you've come from a business background, or if you've worked in that sector,
Mhm,
sometimes it kind of just comes naturally. But yeah,
mhm.
it was definitely one of the reasons I was able to maybe pivot to thinking that way.
Okay. So we're talking about Thrive Select
Yeah.
Thrift, which is this boutique thrift store in Maryville Road.
Yeah.
And before we really unpack it, take us back to that sort of 2015,
Yeah.
2016 period. You're only a couple of years with the organization. You've got this business background. You have the sense that maybe there's something here. So
Yeah.
take us back to that time and how what did you do? What were the conversations that were happening at that time?
Well, it was really, 2015. So I didn't start in the executive director role. I started as the service delivery manager. And in 2015, the position presented itself, and I was able to step into the role in September of that year. We were struggling. We were struggling as an organization in terms of we didn't have a lot of events, we didn't have a lot of annual giving. And so we really trying to think of something that would be different. And at the time, social enterprise was really something that everyone was talking about in the city. I remember going to some workshops with CSED at the time, and it was something that everybody was really referring to. And I had my board chair at the time say, Susan, have you heard about social enterprise? And I was like, no, I hadn't. And I looked into it and I thought, okay, this is something that might make sense. But the reality is, I needed to have a board. So I went to the board and I said, okay, could we do something that would be a little different? And at the time, we had an RBC associate. RBC was doing their future launch um, program, and we had this RBC student associate who was able to start a business plan for us, and so talking about social enterprise, talking about another way to bring in revenue. And the first thing we went to is, okay, what are other agencies doing? So not trying to start not to try and think outside the box, but to actually try and do something that was actually being already happening in the country. And we had a couple of agencies across Canada who were already collecting clothing. And so that's where we started. We said, okay, could we collect clothing? How difficult would it be for us to invest in some clothing bins? Who could we go and speak to about how that's happening, and really start to do a little bit of research on it? And that's what we started with, recognizing that it was, not a lot of labor, something we could invest in quite quickly, and the risk was minimal because if it didn't work out, we could just stop. We weren't buying a building, we weren't, investing in anything. And luckily, we had a partner, a sister agency in Gatineau, who was already collecting clothing and selling at wholesale. And they really helped us get started. They lent us their truck. I asked the board to invest in 3 clothing bins. We spent, $3,000 at the end of 2015, and then I had to place them, and that kind of got us started. But it was really that. It was really just thinking, okay, what could we do? Having the RBC associate to help us write the business plan, and having a sister agency that could really, some experts that could help us.
hmm Do you think at the time, the board that you were dealing with, it strikes me that not every board
No.
would say yes to that idea,
Yeah.
right? It's unproven. They're not familiar with it.
Yeah.
So how unique was the board at that time? Was there something that just gave them that sense of confidence that they needed to say,
Yeah.
this is a good idea. Let's move forward.
I mean, I do think part of it was they recognized the need. We needed to do something different. I think the other piece was, when it was presented to them, it wasn't like we had a business plan, we had numbers attached to it, we had a forecast. It was a minimal investment. We had the dollars to be able to buy the clothing bins. But yeah, I do think the composition of the board at the time, and I feel that I mean, they trusted me. I think that helps too when they trust the leader, even though I was in the role, it was fairly new to the role, and I was actually at an interim basis. It was only, they were only going to make up their minds after a couple of months of me being in the role. I do think there was an element of trust there, and I believed in it, so it makes all the difference when you really believe in it. And I would not have presented it to them if I didn't believe in it. And I would not have presented it to them if I didn't feel like it made sense and the numbers made sense. Um, I am risk adverse as well, but uh, I'm also a risk taker. So
Mhm.
you can be both. You can be adverse to risk, but you can also be a risk taker at the same time. So I think it was a bit of everything, but definitely had the board not agreed, we wouldn't be where we are right now.
Mhm.
So that board in 2015 really is they had a strategic um you know way of looking at it, and they trusted me. I
Mhm.
guess it was a good combination. It was the right time.
Yeah, I think a great combination based on what's happened, and I think your point about having the conviction, your self conviction,
Hmm.
and just saying, this is something that you really see a way forward with, and through that conviction, the board was then able to have that trust that they needed.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I think really, if I really look back at it and say why did they, I would say that's exactly what it was. I mean, the RBC associate, she did a phenomenal job in doing the research and marketing research, and just looking at, and then going, the two of us went to visit the agency in Gatineau to see how it was set up, and we really took our time to figure out if this made sense. But yeah, I think I think we did due diligence in advance, and yeah,
Mhm.
and the board was ready.
So you have you have 3 bins. They're out in the
Yeah,
community. You're collecting clothes. Things are going well. Was that the vision, or were you thinking in the back of your mind,
yeah.
let's try to take this somewhere further?
Yeah, the business plan did have phases. We actually thought of a school. The second phase was always going to be a retail location, starting with the clothing bins and then the retail location. Not really having a timeline set, other than, once we knew the bins were doing well, when could we afford to move into have a store? But we also thought of doing like a mobile store, which was actually at the end of the day more expensive than having and more complicated than having a bricks and mortar. But yeah, it was always the natural, because it became a revenue stream for us. The clothing bins were a revenue stream. So I'll just back up a little bit to say, we had the 3 clothing bins, and then because they were doing well, we knew we wanted to continue to expand that.
Mhm.
So we applied for a Trillium grant, a Grow grant, and part of that Grow grant was to bring in. We wanted to expand our programming up to the age of 24, but at the same time, in order to sustain that, a portion of that application was to grow our social enterprise. And so Trillium backed us for 3 years, and it helped us buy another 20 clothing bins, and it also helped us buy our own truck. So, because we were borrowing the truck from our sister agency.
Okay.
And so that really was once we had those 20 bins in place, then the revenue increased, right? We started to triple the revenue from a wholesale perspective. But at the same time, it was just a revenue stream. We hadn't incorporated our mission, and our kids weren't involved, and that was really the end goal. As one of the things that the board really liked about the business plan was that we were going to incorporate our mission into the social enterprise at one point. So the store, we always knew the store made sense. Could it have continued as just a revenue line, wholesale? Yes. Would we? But I don't believe. Well, we know we would not have grown. Um, that revenue line wouldn't have grown as much. There's much more revenue to be had with a store, than like to sell retail than to sell wholesale. But at the same time, the benefits now are even past that. The benefits are really about what our young people are receiving, out of being part
Mhm.
of the social enterprise.
And some a couple of things you mentioned that I think are really important is you really were smart about how you leveraged your relationships and partnerships, and you mentioned sister organization, I guess it is in Gatineau,
Yeah.
and using someone else's truck. So I think being very smart initially, and then also saying there's a role for grants like Trillium
Yeah.
to then strategically help you take that next step.
Yeah, and we also, we approached CSID at the time, coached us, and one of the things was, now I have 20 clothing bins. Where am I going to put them? It's a lot of clothing bins, and clothing bins had a bad rap. Um, they're getting better now because the city has a few more. The bylaws are now in place for the clothing bins across the city, but in 2015, 2016, they had a pretty bad rap, and so it was hard to place clothing bins on private property. So you had to get permission from the property owner, and a lot of them, are very messy. People don't take care of them, and they're not always going to charity. So the coaching that we received was like, use the partners that you already have. And we have this amazing partnership with the school boards because of the programming that we run in the schools. And so when we approached the Catholic School Board, they were more than happy to support us having clothing bins at the schools.
Mhm.
And so in 2017, when we received the grant and we purchased the clothing bins, we were able to place all 20 of them across the city at different Catholic schools. And they've been there ever since. So that was really, when you talk about partnerships, so leveraging partnerships, hadn't thought of that, right? I was trying to go out to these property managers and asking them if we could put bins on
Mhm.
there. And I mean, it really wasn't working. I was getting a lot of no's.
Almost like a cold call in that
Like, you're
sense.
cold calling, and I mean, they know us, but they also, just because we're big brothers, big sisters, doesn't mean our clothing bins are gonna be well kept, right? So it was a lot of legwork in that regard, and, it took a good 6 months for us to figure that out, but we had patience, and, it's not like we didn't purchase the bins ourselves, right? We were able to purchase through the grant, so it gave us some breathing room and some time to try and figure it out and
Mhm.
how to get them placed, but yeah.
So now you have a much expanded
Yeah.
network of bins. You're collecting lots of donated
Mhm.
clothing and other items. Is there something that happens next before a physical store?
Not really. We were
Okay.
just trying to establish ourselves, trying to establish that line of revenue, right? So, we went from collecting, I don't know, maybe 1,000 pounds a week of clothes, and we went up to we're at 8,000 pounds of clothes a week, right?
Okay.
That was a lot of clothes, and we had to be able to sell them, and so it was negotiating that with our sister agency because they would purchase the clothes from us. They had the contract with their wholesaler, and so instead of us selling direct, we sold through them. So that took us some time, and then it was like, okay, so at what point is the agency ready to move into having a store? And so, we would by 2019, we had been doing it. 2017. So we had already been 2 years in of collecting quite a number of clothes. We were over 1 million pounds of clothes collected at that point.
Wow.
Yeah, we were collecting a
Wow.
lot of clothes. And so really that's when we said, okay, is it time? And the idea was it was our 50th anniversary in 2020.
Okay.
So let's open a store in our 50th anniversary year in September, which is Big Brothers Big Sisters month of 2020. And so that was at the end of 2019, I pitched it to the board and they approved it. And they said, "Yeah, let's do it." And then guess what happened in March of 2020?
Something very bad.
Something
Yeah.
really that none of us could have planned
Yeah.
for. So that kind of put a little bit of a halt,
Okay.
obviously, on the planning. And I had to get over that. I had really had my heart set on 50th anniversary,
Hmm.
September. I was excited about it. And then we realized that wasn't going to
And
happen.
COVID got in the way.
Yeah. And imagine we couldn't collect clothing.
Yeah.
So we weren't able to collect any of we weren't able to collect clothing. We had to shut down all the clothing bins for from March until the fall of 2020. Then things started to slowly get back, but I mean our revenue just took a dive,
Hmm.
right? Like we went from, $90,000 a year in revenue and dropped right down to 30,000. Like we
Okay.
just got the beginning of 2020 collections and then maybe just at the end we started to collect. So we had to pause.
Okay. And so at what point then do do the skies start to clear and you start to say, okay, maybe now it's time
Yeah.
to bring this idea back?
Well, I decided,
Mm.
okay, if it's now or never, it's a chicken and egg thing, right? Like it's okay. How do you find funding to open a store? How do you wait? Do you wait till you get you're bringing in the revenue from the wholesale? I talked to new board members that were coming on in 2021 and got some of their take on it. And they said, well, a bricks and mortar is great, Susan, but you really should need funders to help you with it. And so they're like, if you can secure some funders before, then yes, I think we could go ahead in 2021. And I was determined that we were going to open this store. And so I basically started to think, okay, what other ways could we bring in revenue? And I had gone to another CSED workshop at some
Okay.
point where they talked about getting a loan.
Mhm.
And I went to our bank and I said, hey, what would a loan look like for a store? And, what would the payments look like? And completely manageable. And because I don't want to touch our operating budget
Yeah.
for the actual agency, this has to be something separate because it's
Mhm.
not part of what we're doing for our kids, right? For other
Yeah.
funders. And so decided to do that and thought, okay, if we can do that, then we can get things moving. And I presented it to the board and they approved it. And next thing you know, I'm looking for a space to rent. And then
Fantastic.
we started looking for a place to rent in the beginning of 2022.
Okay. And so
So
um,
that took me a year. Took me
okay.
about a year to get there.
There's not a lot of boards, I
No.
think, that would approve a significantly sized loan. So you have this money. What does that site location search look like? How did you land on Maryville Road where you are?
Well, Maryvale Road, so I always wanted to be on Maryvale Road because, I mean, essentially it's like Thrift Alley, right? Like you've got Salvation Armies there, Value Village is there. And a lot of people would think that's counterintuitive, right? Because they're your competition. But in fact, thrifting is a little different. Thrifters go from store to store to store, right? They're looking for the deal, the find, they want to do the search. So when you're close, there's a reason a Salvation Army is directly across from a Value Village, on Maryvale Road. So I always wanted to be on Maryvale Road. It took me some time to find a space, though. I mean, I was looking at all different spaces across the city, and I actually had made three different offers for spaces, and we were rejected all the offer. They rejected all our offers because a lot of property management did not want to have thrift stores in their malls,
Okay.
thinking that it would like the type of people that would be coming to it. Like there's some stigma around it,
Okay.
and also they want garbage outside, etc. So, but you know what? It worked out because the right one came along on
Mhm.
Maryvale Road. We're right in Emerald Plaza, and it had the loading dock in the back that I needed because that was really hard to find because my truck needs to be able to get in the back and unload all the clothing that we're collecting. And we needed a big enough space to maybe have a community center, a community area, like a community hub, because, Big Brothers Big Sisters traditionally is, we're creating these amazing relationships that happen out in the community. And so we don't have a place for people to come and see what happens, that come and watch our kids build these relationships. And so having a store meant more than just as a retail location. For us, it was going to be a place where we could talk about our work, a place maybe that our kids could come. And so I really wanted to find a space that would be, and maybe our partners could come, and we could have workshops around how to sew and things like that. So this space was a 10,000 square foot space that they were cutting in half. And I wanted the loading dock side, and that's what I got. So,
Okay.
but yeah, that's why we chose Maryvale Road. It was perfect. It worked out perfect.
And the grand opening was when?
September 17th, 2022.
2022. Okay. And so how did it feel on that day? It
That
must
day
have been.
was the best
Oh,
day in my career. I posted about it on LinkedIn. I remember I was over the moon, and everybody who had heard about our dream to have this store and had been on the journey with us came out to the event. And it was a highlight of my career that we actually got it open, and it looked exactly like I imagined. And the name Thrive, people ask me, how did you come up with the name? And I honestly woke up at 2 in the morning. I had been thinking about, okay, it has to be something that represents our kids, represents us, represents what we're trying to do. And then it just, boom, it popped into my head one night, and I just wrote it down.
okay.
And, but to see it up on the wall and to see, oh, it was just like the best, it was the best moment for me personally, and professionally. And the board, I know, was thrilled. They were thrilled.
And I'm sorry I wasn't there because it must have been such a proud moment. And so for someone that hasn't been in the store, um, maybe just describe a little bit. What are they going to? What's it going to feel like? What are they going to see? I think it's there are many types of thrift stores, so I think
Yeah.
yours is unique.
Yeah, like the idea for us was to have it more boutique style, right?
Mhm.
But recognizing that, like, we really wanted it to, when you walked in, you knew it was part of Big Brothers Big Sisters. So tried to keep our branding, our Big Brothers Big Sisters branding, but we also wanted it to feel really warm and really welcoming, safe for everybody. Um, Really clean and smelled good. So, and it does all that. I mean, you walk in, it's in the beautiful teal colors, and our branding is there. It's very clear that we're Big Brothers Big Sisters, supporting Big Brothers Big Sisters. We want it to be uplifting and happy for people, that when they come in, they feel joyful, and they feel like they belong. And I feel like that is the space that we have created. Our manager, business development for social enterprise, is Hope Wood, and Hope has been amazing at. Her name reflects her personality, and she's really brought that to the space. And so, it's when people walk in, the only drawback for us with the look and feel was that I think, speaking to the stigma of thrift stores, I think sometimes people think it's more of a consignment or a high-end store. So one of the challenges we had at the beginning was really making sure that people knew, like, this is a true thrift store. Our prices, everything's really affordable, but it's quality. Like, we make sure that it's
Mhm.
quality items. Things are not um, ripped or torn or broken. But that when you come in, yes, it feels a little more elevated, but it's still in line with if you were going to another thrift store.
Mhm. You're touching on a number of factors there that I think really I think show you that at the end of the day, this is a business,
Yeah.
and you can only lead with social impact for so long. So, are there key factors? You've mentioned some, but what would you say are those really critical things that you need to make sure that you do well so that you're going to thrive as a thrift store over time?
Yeah, well, and you're right. So you can't, we can't only rely on the fact that we're supporting a charity, right? And so, as when we look at ourselves as a retail location and a retailer, the pricing is like number one for people when they come in. We have to
Mhm.
make sure we're competitive, quality of the product that we're selling. Definitely, the customer service makes a big difference. I know when we have the right people in the store and making greeting people and making sure people are feeling seen and helped, that makes a big difference. The variety of what we're offering as well, like we started as a clothing only, and then we decided to add on household items because not all thrifters were coming into the store, and so recognizing what people want and what it is that they're looking for and shopping for. So I'd say those are all really big factors. And then being able to tell people about the store is really
Right.
important. The advertising and the marketing, I think, we underestimated how important that was going to be.
Okay. And so what is it about advertising and marketing that,
Yeah.
that makes it significant?
Well, the most important part for us is for people to know that we're there. So, you know, um, we do have the Value Village and Salvation Army on Maryville Road. At the same time, where we are in Maryville on in Emerald Plaza, we're in this like little. It's like a little corner. So the signage from the street is a little more difficult to see.
Okay.
So once people know we're there, they continue to come back. We
Hmm.
we have that data now, but it's getting them to come in for the first visit that's important for us. So that's where the marketing is focused, and that's one of the things that we're doing in 2026 is we're going to be really focusing on how do we let people know that we're there in that mall,
Hmm.
because once they're there, really we know that they come back 2, 3, 4 times.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've been there in person into the store, and I can certainly confirm that the just the feeling that you get in the store is so lovely. It's so warm, vibrant colors.
Thanks.
It's the merchandise. It's well merchandised. It's lovely.
Thank you.
And you mentioned Hope Wood. How important? And I'm thinking about your comments about the board
Yeah.
and their involvement over many years. How important is teamwork in the sense of being able to realize this vision?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, having the entire agency recognize that the store is part of what we do, that, we now have programming that's wrapped around the store. That took about a year or two for people to kind of say, okay, it's not something separate. It's really part that we have to embrace. And our programs team was using the space to start running workshops. And we have our Halloween event for our kids there now every year. So that type of embracing it as a team has really evolved over time. But also, we have the staff. We Many of our staff learned how to run the cash in case Hope was not feeling well or we needed some help on the cash. Everybody knows how to do that. But also, our board, they volunteer.
Okay.
One of our biggest our most well-known volunteer is Keith Eglai, a former city councilor, but
Hmm.
also our past chair on the board. Him and his wife Kristen, they volunteer every Tuesday, and constantly posting on X about what outfits they're finding and that type of thing. But having the board participate has been amazing as volunteers. We have other board members also that volunteer, and many of them want to volunteer with their spouses. So it's been really like a full on, um, uh, I guess, in project of everybody's in the
Yeah.
in the in, and learning, even our development team and our marketing and comms team. It's like, how do we talk about Thrive and everything that we do? We have different. We're separate in a way. We have separate social media, but yet we support each other's social media.
Hmm.
We support the programming. We support the kids. Even though we have a separate co-op program, our programs team still is able to support Hope with her co-op program. So it really has revolved around and evolved around each other, which is nice.
I love the way you've described it in terms of really leveraging Thrive for, the broader organization itself,
Hmm.
and how that way there's not this separation. So I love the way that you've described that. What So Thrive is celebrating, or just recently celebrated, its anniversary.
Yep. We just finished our third year, so we're now in our fourth year
Okay.
of it's I cannot believe how quickly it's passed.
Mhm.
And you know, we keep doing better every year. Our sales go up, we have more customers. 2026 is our pivotal year. We really want to see our the numbers increase significantly. We want to see more traffic into the store. You know, we have more we've been doing some amazing events. Like I didn't mention all of our partners. You know, we have our community partnership program where our community partners can have their clients come in and shop for free if they're in need. And so, you know, we've been trying to do a lot of community work as well. Because we know, like, we're not the only organization that has youth in need or adults in need, and we want to make sure that we are able to support our other community partners in the city. So we're doing a lot of good work around that.
And so those community partners could work with you to identify a date,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
their clients or beneficiaries could then come and shop.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and even right now we're doing we're launching a holiday campaign where the general community can buy bags of clothes, and that we will then donate. We'll have a day where our community partners, clients, they all come in and they can get a bag of clothes and take it home with them. So
Oh, fantastic.
yeah, so we're trying to do more of that we try to do that every year, and we do clothing swaps. We did the Capital Pride clothing swap this year. We've really tried to be very inclusive in our store, and we have gender neutral signage. We're a safe we're a safe place for the LGBTQ2S plus community to come and shop.
Hmm.
And so we've had some great success with working with people that are, some communities that are struggling, and we're trying to be there for them.
Hmm. Fantastic.
Yeah.
What comes next? Where would you like to see Thrive in, say, in 5 years?
Well, I'd like there to be more than one Thrive. How about
Okay.
that? Yeah,
Okay.
another store. I'd like to see us continuing to support other communities. I'd like to see us continuing to grow our co-op program. We've had so much success with our young people coming in and learning about, they do all sorts of different things. You know, they're learning about retail and inventory, and
Mhm.
they're learning about customer service, and it's all hands-on, social media, all of that. So, you know, we started with 4 co-op students in the first semester of the year that we started, and we have over 24 a year now that are coming through our doors, on top of their volunteer hours that we have students coming in and doing. So I'd like to see that expand, and if we have a second store, that would expand into another section of the city. So, we've got the supply. We have our clothing bins going well, so why not open another store? I think that makes a lot of sense,
Mhm.
and I'd like to be able to help other agencies, start. There are other agencies out there that have co-op that have social enterprises, but haven't incorporated their mission into that
Mhm.
social enterprise. And I think that there's ways to do that can benefit clients of any organization.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It sounds absolutely wonderful, and it more than sounds. It is wonderful. Um, where can someone who's watching the podcast, where can they go for further information?
Well, you can go to the thrivethrift.ca website.
Okay.
There's also the Big Brothers Big Sisters website, which is BBBSO.ca.
Okay.
You can call the store. I mean, we do have a map of all of our clothing bins. If you do have clothes that you want to
Okay.
drop off, there's clothing bins across the city. There's a map on the website, on the Thrive website. But we also take donations at the store. So you can drop off at the store, and we take household items as well. So we can take some furniture, we take glassware, all sorts of stuff for household items. So, and drop it off at the store, no problem. Yeah.
Okay. Well, CSET has been very pleased to have been supporting
Yes.
Thrive and Big Brothers Big Sisters of Ottawa, and certainly we're totally excited to see where Thrive goes over the coming years. It's such a wonderful story here in the city that shows the power of social enterprise and business approaches to ultimately what is social good, what is community building and community impact.
Yeah.
And so it's such a lovely story, a wonderful example, and it's wonderful to have you with us today, Susan, looking and excited about what's ahead for you.
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you very
It's
much.
fun to share. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. This is Michael Murr with CSED. I'd like to thank the City of Ottawa for its financial support of our podcast series.